Welcome to Curito Connects. I'm your host, Jenn, and I've been conversing with friends around the world about life challenges and impactful moments. Conversations on this platform look at answering the questions how we overcome challenges and how our experiences shape who we are and the work we do today. I hope this work can inspire you on your own personal and individual journey. Let's dive right in. Hello, my guest today is New York City-based Ariana Ost, a jewelry designer and healer, founder of Ariana Ost. Hi, Ariana, and welcome to Curito Connects.
Thank you for having me.
So almost 1 year ago now, I serendipitously stumbled across your studio in New York City with my girlfriend, Leslie. And little did we know how long we would end up staying in the studio space, exploring your creations and actually meeting you in person. I think I remember you opening the door and going, oh, I'm usually not in the studio, so this is such a coincidence that you guys arrived when I'm there. So that was really fun. And it was a delightful afternoon. And I'm so honored to have you here with us today to share your journey with us. In some ways, I think our stories are parallel a little, in which we both lost a parent in 2009 through cancer. And we both have found the benefits and explored the healing wellness space over the years. Ariana is here to share with us how she is so passionate about healing the world through fashion-forward aesthetics, motherhood, leaving a legacy, and how these are elements that drives her to continue to build the business she started with her father. In 2013 is when your father joined you, and 2016 was when the brand launched. So without further ado, I will let Ariana introduce herself to our audience and share her journey with us.
Hi, I'm Ariana, and I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I was always inspired by fashion and fashion design. I studied in Parsons School of Design, and that's where I really got my love of fine art, fashion history, interior design exposure, photography, and I really stumbled into a lot of different creative outlets. Also through Parsons, I studied in Paris, and that was, my biggest inspiration. Like I grew up going to Paris a lot with my dad, but I really like studying abroad there and living there and immersing myself in the culture. I was just so inspired by the way different people live. So, growing up in New York City, I was exposed to everything, and you're exposed to so much culture in a big city, but there was this like European sophistication that I really liked. And that was where I got inspired by the old world atelier studio concept of craftsmanship, hand making something, not just like something very fast, and I was very taken with that. So when I came back, I started working at my dad's company, which was fashion jewelry, and they would sell to lower end retailers. And I loved designing, I loved being inspired, I loved dreaming, I loved creating. Um, but there was always something like a little bit missing that I was trying to figure out. And in 2006, my mom was diagnosed with terminal, stage lung cancer, and it shakes up your whole world. And you're just like, okay, what do I do with this? How do I reinvent it? And, as far as that journey, it definitely inspired me in my creativity because I felt like, material stuff doesn't matter. Am I going to be frozen? Like, what does matter in life? But, through it all, I started to realize how it all makes sense. And coming in the aftermath of that, like after losing my mom ultimately, which was, a whole journey of amazing healing and inspiration and learning. But, through the grief, I realized that objects can be heirlooms and they mean something to you and they can really inspire you and they can make you feel a certain way. And it's something that you have agency over because we don't have control over a lot of things, but we can control how we present ourselves to the world, what we choose to show as a symbol, what we choose to wear. And, I think it started being more deeply imbued with like this symbolism. And after getting married, I really wanted to start my own space and my own vision. And, we work with a lot of buyers, which is incredible. We do a lot of private label, which is great service, great business. But I wanted to start to put my own aesthetic into the world. And from studying so much art and fashion history and I loved old world culture. I wanted to revive that and have a little more of a contemporary aesthetic, but merge it with wellness, because the wellness world meeting the fashion world, meeting the world of history, how do I make it all make sense? And I like different aspects of each of those. So I love, history and creativity and how things were made. But I also love, the modern world, and I love the wellness world, which goes back to a lot of ancient rituals. But for example, I practice yoga forever, for so many years, and I was just looking around at the decor in these like authentic yoga studios, and I was like, it's not matching like what people are wearing and the fashion and how trendy it is, but there, I wanted to make decor that was like more ethereal, lighter, fluffier, but with deep meaning. So it all sort of came together. And in 2016, I launched the brand after having become a mother myself. And I wanted to, leave like a legacy for my daughter and show her anything is possible, and what can be created. But I made it a lifestyle brand because I wanted to design into what I love. Design into having a home, design into being a mother, design into being a woman, design into being a yogi, like all of the hats that I wear. I wanted to create something for that, but have it all make sense and live together.
Mm. It's like it all kind of threaded together very nicely of your journey thus far. I wanted to kind of go back to the very
Mhm.
beginning when you started telling us about how you were always very interested in design and art. And I wanted to ask, do you remember in your younger days, like what about art? Because you said your dad ran a jewelry business, so I think you saw a lot of stones and gemstones growing
Mhm.
up. And I was wondering if you remember really clearly which part of design really sparked your interest when you were younger. Were you that little girl that always had like a paper and marker running around drawing things, or you were constantly tinkering and creating things in the home space? Was it your dad or your mom that gave you that exposure to a lot of the more artistic side or the creative side that
Yeah,
ignited
so
that for you?
it's a very interesting mix of, how I was brought up and how I was. So my mom was more of an artist. Like, she would paint, she would draw, she would always be doodling and sketching. Very, very talented. She painted when she was younger. She was also a great writer, very expressive, very deep, super creative. My dad had more of a sophistication and a cultural flair. He loved travel and lifestyle and really living in each moment, like amazing gourmet food, the finest fabrics, materials. And he put everything together. Like, he would, source materials, he would find trends. He liked to understand people. And I think I had the exposure to both. So even though I'm very creative, I see all these ideas in my head, but I don't have the technical skills to do them. Like, I've taken courses in all of that, but even at Parsons, I studied a lot of art history and learned all about the art, but I wasn't the one, making it myself. So even
Mm,
with the designs, like, I have so many ideas in my head, but I have amazing sample makers, bench workers, and I can sort of orchestrate all of this. And I wasn't the person always sketching, but I do love to write. I do love to feel very deeply, and I do just like imagine things, and I have like through words like and visuals like a good way of explaining. Like, I always know exactly how I want something to look, and the sample makers we have worked with us for a long time, so they sort of know like what I mean, and I'll always
mhm,
find reference pictures. And so I think it's more about curating and cultivating. And I just was so always interested in how people lived. I loved, like, I guess it's really psychology in a certain way, but I would always observe, like, why is someone wearing this? Why are they doing that? And I would say when I was younger, I was always really into fashion. Like, I loved vintage clothing, fashion history. I would, delve into books on why people dress differently in different eras. And I was always going to exhibits and museums. And
mm,
I didn't know how to, jewelry I sort of fell into because that was the family business. And I was always inspired by the trend shopping and the culture through the business that I did with my dad rather than the exact
mm,
item or product.
mhm. Oh, that's very interesting. Because I was gonna ask you, like, if you were so interested in the way people dress or how they carry themselves, um,
Yeah.
why you didn't go into a fashion house post graduation from Parsons? You know, like,
Yeah.
were was there at one point in your career where you thought, okay, after graduating from Parsons, I want to work for some of your favorite labels, for instance, or
Yeah.
work for the costume department at the Met, for instance, right? Like to
Yeah,
study
I
all the
thought
different.
about I thought about all of that, and I think that ultimately I was like, I wanted to have some control and agency. My dad knew my creativity and he sort of wanted me to be in the family business. And I knew that at the fashion houses, like I'd have to think like, what role would I be? Would it be design marketing? Would it be management? Would it be
Hmm.
like PR? Like I didn't know what exact space it would be because I'm not the technical one designing. Is it somebody merchandising? Is it, so I think I would have had to have more time to dabble and explore into that.
Hmm. Hmm. That's true. I remember also when I was kind of entering that industry too. You're right. It's like there's so many different departments and roles that's
Niches. Yeah.
actually, yeah, and it's actually not very clear like what that
No.
role is that you do. So I think you're absolutely right. It's like it's actually very confusing because you're like, well, if I design, do I go into the design department or do I do visual merchandising or merchandising, which is all very different and is very technical.
And
So
then
it
you
can
get
get a little.
pegged into that and you're sort of locked in.
Yes. Yes. I agree. So then at that point when your dad asked you to kind of come back into the family business and help out, was there at any point where you like didn't want to, or you were kind of like, okay, like I will do it because I feel like when we talk about family businesses, right? There's always two sides to the story, and everyone's experience is different. You know, sometimes it's expected. Some people don't want to do it. Some people do want to do it. And I'm just curious if you can share with us your experience working with your dad, and then I guess asking in a way to spin off and do your own label and how that process was, if you can share with us.
Yes. So my dad was in a private label jewelry business with his two brothers, my uncles. So it was a family business. So it wasn't just him, and they each had different roles. One uncle was sales, one uncle was like shipping, and my dad was the production and business person. Um, and he ran the design department. So he was able to oversee all of that. And when I came into a company that had a bunch of designers, and now here is Jack's young daughter coming in, whom they view with like a leg up or sort of privilege. And I was given the opportunity to design. And some people were nice and would sort of teach me or train me because I didn't have experience in that specifically. Like they had cubicles, they had beads, they had machines, they had stuff. And like, a customer would be coming and I wanted to dabble and play. And they were very serious about like what they had to do and what presentation and what meeting. And some of them were actually very mean to me and, would like not want to help me or not, like view it as their time. So I had to navigate a lot of drama and politics within that because I wasn't trying to take advantage of anyone. I was just trying to like learn and figure out my career path and not take advantage of just being the boss's daughter. So that is also a lesson because I think that what I ultimately realized about working with people, everything's about connections because it's about like the network, the community you build, the buyers, the customers, the like everything that you work with is about relationships, and it's not just about talent or about what someone needs. So I had to learn the hard way in how to navigate all of these dynamics at like a young age. And when I was younger, I was really shy and much more meek. And through having my own business, I've come out of my shell and built myself and built my identity. And I've gone through, my life stages. But at that time, I was, much more reserved and timid. So it really did have to break me out. Um, But I remember the feeling. They used to sell to Banana Republic jewelry, and like I just started dabbling in some making things that I thought were very cute or things that I would want to wear, and they selected it, and it was literally like my first pitch, and they just mixed my samples in with the other people, and like then they produced my earring, and like I would go to Banana Republic stores and see this like little earring that I created at my desk, and it was such an exciting feeling. And then you start getting more stuff selected and more stuff selected. And then like you walk on the street and you see someone wearing a necklace you made and you're like, oh my God, like this is crazy that like I could just make something and then it gets sold and no one even knows where it originated from. So it just sort of unfolded in that way, which was pretty exciting.
Oh, that's I feel like I was like when you were saying that I could, I'm like, "Oh, so excited for you."
Yeah, yeah.
But the part where after you spent your time, learning the ropes and experiencing those things you just shared with us, when you pivoted to say, "Hey, I want to do my own collection," how was that conversation with your dad? Like, was that
So
something that
that was
was like
actually
supportive?
so that was fast forward a long time because um, so I had started working after I graduated in 2005. And then I was working through in 2006, my mom was diagnosed. And then in
Mm,
2009, my mom passed away. And then in 2012, I got married. And so my dad worked with my uncle, and there was a lot of drama and dynamics and things that were not fair that I'm not even going to get into. But the point was, I just felt like I couldn't be in that environment, and I couldn't, I didn't have control over what was happening, and I really needed to be, on my own or have a fresh start. And I felt like, okay, I'm newly getting married. What do I want my life to be? How do I want my life to work? I don't want to just be, because essentially I was just an employee at my, dad and uncle's company. And, it was nice, but I almost in a certain way like taken advantage of because they know what my capabilities are and I'm just going to be there anyway. And I felt like whereas if I was someone who was hired I would have certain opportunities or agency. But the real reason that I left was I really wanted to create an environment that was more positive, more calm. And I always wanted to dream big. And the idea of the other company was like more corporate, more bottom line, dollars driven. And I really wanted to just find this way to merge all of the worlds. So I just said, let me take a chance and I'm going to walk away. And I'm going to start my own thing out of my apartment. And I let, a buyer know that I had like I worked with free people, and I let the buyer know like, okay, I think I'm just gonna like start something on my own, and she was like, no, what are you gonna do? I want to buy from you. I love your creativity. And so I started just working out of my apartment, and some of my sample makers came over and we started creating, we started producing, and I started doing something just on the side. And the ideas were so fun and the meetings. And now I didn't have an office space anymore. I was used to being in a big showroom and an office and having all this space to invite anyone in and do whatever I need and a place to work out of. And now I'm just on my own. And I rented like a little conference room to have a meeting near where they were staying. And I brought the samples over. And I was just very, um, like, I knew how to just make these very like quick and smart decisions of like, okay, let me rent a conference room. Let me do this. And it all just like unfolded. And my dad was still at his business. And then I told him, I said, I think this is what I'm going to do. And he was like, okay, I'll help you. I'm going to stay here. Like whatever you need, let me know. And then I saw the potential in what we were doing. And I wanted him to come and join, but we were still doing mostly design service at that time. We were just doing it in a more personal way. So he was like, I'll help you find a space. So I found this beautiful studio, the one that you came to right away. Serendipitously found the studio, and it was for rent for a 6-month rental because I couldn't commit to a few-year lease. I had no idea if I would have business, if I would income, nothing. So it was actually, I think at first like a 3-month sublease, and I was like, okay, let me try it. And then the business started flowing, and the guy was like, okay, you could take over my lease, go directly to the landlord. But it had to all unfold. And then my dad joined. We were doing private label, and then after I had my daughter, I really wanted something more meaningful. And because we had the private label business coming in, we're like, okay, let's take a chance. Let's create a brand. Let's just play with it like it's a side project, of labor of love, and see what happens. And slowly it started organically unfolding. And we created a tabletop collection, and then it went to Bergdorf's and Anthropology, and like it was really exciting. And we created wall decor, and even like we used to do some trade shows, and we'd get little boutiques who want to try it. Or the owner of ABC Carpet and Home like came into the booth and was like, I've never seen coasters like this ever, and I want to get this for our store. And it was just like all sort of happening organically.
Mhm.
And then we started getting deeper into wellness, and I wanted to bring in crystals, and I wanted to bring in like more healing modalities and things that meant a lot to me. So the collection just started unfolding. When I had my daughter, I added kids and mobiles and baby hair clips. And then we started to find, okay, what does our brand mean? What does our name mean? What is the identity? Who are we
Mm.
targeting? And we would get these wholesale accounts like, I don't even remember how Crystal Knight found us, but she's amazing. And it was like, oh my God, that's so cool. I've never been to Australia. And she had, would reorder and reorder and reorder. And it's an exciting feeling. And now I'm at a place where we've identified ourselves with creating home and wall decor, like a jewelry approach to design. And we source amazing crystals that have certain properties and energies, and we create them for people who understand the wellness and for people who just like the aesthetic. So we
Mm.
have iconic home decor pieces, we have tabletop, we have jewelry, and it's really this merge of a lifestyle. And I think that it's always evolving, and I'm excited to see where it will continue to go and unfold based on like my life, the experience, culture, what people want, what people need.
Mm.
And it's also because I'm very into wellness, I've always wanted to help people or heal people or do some deeper work. And I feel like the products are almost the messengers for that. They're like visual reminders for,
Mm.
practices and philosophies and therapies I've done. So,
Can we dive into that subject matter, which it was very funny because you completely transitioned for me when you mentioned that, because I
oh,
had wanted to go back into that topic of
right,
asking
right.
you, like, you had mentioned, when we first started the conversation about how you've always been practicing yoga and being in New York City, you probably have seen how the yoga scene has evolved over the years, to, in the beginnings to where it is now. And, so I wanted to ask you, for you personally, when did you first step into your first yoga class? Was that also during the time your mom got sick, or even way before that? And how did you dive into your own healing journey? Like, which part of different things in your life triggered you with different moments that maybe sought therapist or sought sound healers, like all the different modalities that you might have been exposed to get you to where you are today, including how you design your products based on your own experience of being healed by sound, for instance. I actually even took out these because people can't
Oh,
see it, but I
amazing.
had one.
You're
I
tuning
love
for it.
these. Yeah, you're tuning for it. I don't even know if it actually will resonate if I try to do it through the speaker,
I
the
hear it.
microphone. But yeah, but yeah. So just
It's
products
amazing.
like this. So I wanted to have you share with us your own
Yeah.
healing experiences and journey,
Uh,
whether it's as young as parental experiences, or past relationships or marriage or motherhood, and what you used or been exposed to over the years to help you heal. Then you
Yeah, I
apply
love
that
the
into
way you
your
ask your
design.
questions. I feel like it's a whole life subjective because it's like this timeline. So yeah, I just turned 40 in November, so we have it's a while. But pretty much, so as a child, I was always like very flexible and acrobatic, and I used to do a lot of gymnastics. And as you get older, there's like less adult gymnastics, and even like in college, like I took some gymnastics classes, but it's more geared towards younger people. And I'm not like an Olympic level gymnast where I'd be training in groups. So one of my friends at Parsons, when I first started, like told me about some yoga classes, and I didn't know what yoga was. And it was more in the student scene, like people were going, and then like I just entered that world, and that was it. Like I went into Jiva Mukti for my first class, and the teacher was a guy named Andrew who used to work in finance, and he just was so passionate about it. And the old Jiva Mukti studio is near where I live now, like downtown in NoHo, and it was such a cool space. And I grew up in Brooklyn, and I used to live in Brooklyn, and I would come in, and it was just such a cool city, big window, energy vibe, new age, and I liked the feeling. And yoga was pretty much like slow motion gymnastics. And it was a way to utilize like my flexibility. But at that time, it was really still all physical for me. I did not get into, like the meditate. I was like, okay, we're lying down, but like I didn't understand the point of it. Like I just wanted to like do handstands, do headstands, do back bends, do acrobatics, flip, contort my body. Like, and it really, I didn't understand the meaning of the breath work, I didn't understand the meditation, and I just sort of dismissed it for a while. And you know things unfold the way that they need to. So at first it was like a physical exposure, and I loved it. And then I got then at Jiva Mukti, I was there for a while, and they're like, listen, you're getting to a different stage of your yoga practice, like you really need to move on and go to Dharma. And I was like, who's Dharma? They're like, he's the master yogi. He's the one who made the charts that made them follow, that made them create Jiva Mukti. They did his teacher training. And, I started going to Dharma, and that was like a whole other universe. And it was just, he used to be in this walk up near 23rd. He's now 80 something. He's amazing.
Yeah.
I've even recently taken my daughter to him, and it's really fun. But like, it was a whole world, and it was all yoga teachers that took the class, because the level that I was at, I started practicing with yoga teachers. So like I was exposed to people who had incredible practices and incredible energy, and it was just like, contagious in a certain way. And it was very playful, it was very fun, and like those yoga classes like meant so much to me. And through the journey of whatever else was happening in my life, yoga sort of became this constant practice that I would go to, feel good, to unwind, to move, to connect. And it was really, very therapeutic. And, I think it came much later where I really understood the breath work, the vibrations, the pose, like really understood the meaning and the philosophy, and was able to get into the meditation. And because like I'm always thinking, I'm always creating, I'm always dreaming, my mind would be at 1,000 miles an hour. And this ability to let it go, and like Dharma and his meditations like would say, like, leave the body by itself, and you sort of like separate from yourself for a period of time to just really like recharge. And I started to feel those effects, and I'm like, okay, if I didn't know about all this, and I'm so interested in it, and I really like it, how can I make that accessible to other people? How can I share that? How can I teach people about these practices and rituals? And when my mom got sick, she became vegan and went all natural, and I started learning all about health and wellness. But again, it was still like physical, in a sense of like, okay, let's filter the water, let's filter the air, let's use only clean products, let's eat only clean food. And it was about removal of like what goes into your body. But I didn't understand how you don't only digest your food, you digest your thoughts, you digest your feelings, you digest your emotions. And that was more of a later awakening, but it had to start again with that like just physical part of it. So we changed our diet, started eating really clean, vegetarian, and went all natural. And my mom was initially diagnosed and given 6 months to live, and through her journey she turned it into 3.5 years of glowing, thriving, looking amazing, defying every odd, defying every doctor's prognosis. And at the end it was still a shock, because she was doing so well, and it sort of just happened, and it took me by surprise. But the loss was when I really was broken open. That was when I sort of
Mm.
cracked, because before it was like, okay, this is working, this is helping. And now it was like, you're faced with like the biggest loss, but how do you also still stay positive and see it as a win? Because She was given 6 months and got 3.5 years. She had a
Mm,
wonderful quality of life when she was sick and was never sick. And at the end, it just happened so quickly. So, yes, I wasn't prepared, but she didn't suffer. So,
mhm,
it's how to like work through all of that and all of those feelings. And now here I am when my mother passed away in 2009, I was 25 years old. And, I was young. I was just like starting in my, I was started like establishing my career in designing and yoga. And I was dating my now husband. And, you're in this phase of your life where everything's supposed to be young and carefree and easy. And now I was like, it was very heavy. And
mm,
how do you unpack that? How do you process that? How do you, go through that? And I think always having meaning and creativity and experiences and connection like got me through that. And that was when I was like, okay, how can fashion and all this stuff matter? It's just stuff. Like, and I think as I got deeper and deeper and deeper into like who I am, my essence, my soul, my purpose, all of these wellness practices, health and wellness, and, just being open minded, I felt like I noticed everyone just like goes through the motions in their life and they're so programmed and they don't want to understand certain things. But
mm,
you just realize that whatever you think you don't know. And you also, like with food, like you eat a certain way growing up, you think that that's the way society eats and this is normal, but then you can question everything and be like, they're putting chemicals in your food. They're putting things that are toxic, that are poisons. Like, how is that safe? Like, you're given something and you don't realize that you can question. So now, like, I question everything. And it doesn't mean that I'm combative. It just means that I, try to analyze things in a different way. I don't take things at face value. So it changed the whole framework of my thinking, my approach to life, the way I take things. But over the years, I think I've been on a more spiritual journey, an awakening, a real connection to purpose and meaning. And it comes in different waves. But I think part of that has been channeling creativity for me and channeling ideas. And what I struggle with is through different hardships that I face at different times, because that, losing my mother isn't the only thing that I've gone through, but I've had other challenges, which, I don't necessarily need to discuss, but I go into more of a freeze mode. And I'm like, okay, if this is happening to me, what do I need to get unstuck? What do I need to go through? So that's why I always create products that have helped me through different things. And that's how
mm,
it sort of all unfolds.
mm. Do you think that, um, because usually for individuals who are very in tuned with their own
Mhm.
self and their wellness practice, that it's so quite important, like you said earlier, with the right frequency and vibrations of the people around them. So I was just out of curiosity, is your husband and your dad both also in alignment with the things that you're creating, so to speak?
Yes, I mean sometimes they like to have a sense of humor and joke about it and laugh about it and okay, what am I talking about now? What's going on? What's the latest thing? And because when I'm into something, I'm obsessed. I'm all in. I'm passionate. I'm alive. It's all I can talk about and I just become like so illuminated. So it's like, okay, but I have to say like both of them are pretty open-minded to whatever, is happening, and they each have their own personalities. Like we each have, everybody has our own limitations and our own
Mm,
ability, but I try to like break down those walls within myself and within other people and try to
mhm,
invite it in. But like, my dad, he works with me, so he ends up having to produce any of these ideas that I have, and it's like, okay, what now? Or no, 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 this is too much, this is out of the scope, this is not, like, what do we need to create? And because at first he was versed in jewelry, only makes jewelry. Now I'm like, I want to make home decor. And now it's big, different molds, different things, not the factories he's used to, but we had to break the mold literally and like create these larger scale pieces and really go out of the box in thinking. And he would have to find this innovation in a way to make things happen and source things and do everything.
mm.
But he's pretty open-minded, and I think he realizes that when I have an idea, I'm not going to let down, so I'm not going to stop it. So it's sort of like we have to do it. And that's why we have so many different categories, because some are my ideas, but really some are also buyers. Like we sell to different buyers and they'll be like, oh, hey, I know you guys are really good at that. Can you make this? And sometimes me and my dad will look at each other and be like, how are we going to do that? But we always figure out a way.
Yes. I also wanted to ask you, um, in terms of motherhood and legacy. So, we had mentioned in the introduction that we wanted to emphasize these two elements as well. So, having lost your mom before you becoming a mother yourself, and then wanting to generate a legacy, can you share with us a little bit about that, like that angle that you're so passionate about in terms of preserving where your roots are from, and your experience through motherhood?
Yeah, so I mean, my mother was like my biggest fan, my biggest cheerleader, and she, for whatever her journey was, like she gave up pursuing a career to become a full-time devoted mother. And as an only child, and at that time, it was, more typical to be, a housewife, but she wasn't the typical housewife, like she was super like interested in things and creative and always
Mm,
tried to fill her bucket. But I feel like this may sound judgmental because she may disagree and she's not here to disagree, but like I felt like there was some part of her that didn't reach her full potential.
mm,
And because like she amazing writer, amazing painter, she understood people, she was devoted to people. And there is something also that I come to terms with having children, that it is more than enough, and it is the hardest job in the world, raising kids, doing everything for them, being devoted to them. Like you are sacrificing a piece of yourself, you are giving to them. And I try to balance it because my mom was a full-time mom, and I do want to build this brand and I do want to create stuff, but I realized like I have two children. My daughter is now 9, my son is 5.5, and like that, those memories are all you have. Like business comes and goes, ideas come and go, and the time that you have with your kids, it's like I pick them up from school every single day. I I go to be there. I want to see their faces. I want to hear about their day. I want to know. I want to be in tune with them, and I want to. My mother was so sensitive to me, and I feel like I was very supported, and I had that sensitivity that there's something just lost, for me in my personal experience. I think for many people, you can find wonderful people to care for your children, and I've had nannies, I've had help, I've had babysitters, and now my kids find it really fun to get babysitters because it's like a sprinkle in of playing and different energy and more vibrant. So I think it's a balance, but I still want to be the like primary figure in their lives. I want to be very in tune. I want to know what they're eating. I want to know what they're doing. And I think it's like my opportunity to nurture them and infuse all of these things with them. And sometimes like, the car rides or the bus ride or whatever, however we get home that day, like sometimes it could just be quiet and just like be together. And sometimes like we get so deep into certain topics and they're young. And sometimes I'm just like, life is too short. Let's just go to the museum after school. Let's go see this exhibit. Let's go see this gallery. Let's go to the botanical gardens. And like
mm,
it's just like serendip, like we let it play, we let it flow. Okay, it's nice out. They come with me to do a lot of grocery shopping. They know inventory. They know what bakery they like. They're growing up in New York City, so
yes.
it's pretty cool. Um,
Mm,
but I'm still trying to figure out how to balance, because it was an adjustment. Like, how do you give of yourself to a business? And because it's my own business, I don't always have to show up or answer to someone. But then the ideas are not getting done. Like, if you don't do it, it's kind of sparked. So it
mhm,
ebbs and it flows. So some days like I'll be on fire and have 400 ideas, and days like those I just need to let those ideas last for a long time. And then sometimes I'm like so in a personal issue or so in something else that for a few weeks like I won't think of anything.
mhm,
So it cycles.
mm,
But as far as like the legacy piece, like I want to show my kids that, I have something that I created. They have a studio to come see, a place to come. They play with all the crystals. They love it. They know the tuning forks. The products are hanging all over our home. Whenever like my kids' friends have like birthday parties, I always give gifts from like stuff that I make, and it's interesting and fun, and I like to share that with them. And their friends, and I like to just teach them about thoughts, energy, creativity, ideas, possibilities. And my mom infused all of that in me, but I think she almost sacrificed that for herself. So I want to try to do both.
Mm. Oh, that's so beautiful. Also, I wanted
Yeah.
to ask in terms of we talked about design aesthetics and healing with your aesthetics for lifestyle stuff. I wanted to ask why you chose crystal. So the power of crystals integrated with your design, right? Because there are many other ways we. How should what's the word I'm looking for? Like, there's many other items that can be used in design, right, for healing, right? But for you personally, why did you choose crystals?
So I always knew about crystals when I was like, designing for jewelry, and I loved stones, and but I used it more as a fashion piece, like for color, for
Hmm.
texture, for shape. And then when my mom was on her journey, like she had gotten some crystals and I realized they had a certain power. And then I have a cousin who's very into the healing power of crystals, and I sort of didn't know how to, merge it all. But then I started to like educate myself and go deep on it. And I saw that there was also a response in our customer audience, because if I would have started with it and there was no spark, I would have been like, okay, like, and then it just
Mm.
started getting more and more in demand, and we started stocking more and more stones and materials. And it's kind of like shopping for groceries. Like they look like candy and they're so beautiful, and we would source from amazing places. And now, okay, it's our studio, so we can buy this, so we can get that, we can get that. And now suddenly it's like, this beautiful visual candy shop of crystals, and we
Yeah.
start playing with them and using them in all the designs. And when you get into a certain flavor, like when you're on a kick of like you love lemon, you're going to put lemon in everything. So we started putting that, and there was a response. It wasn't intended to be like, I
Okay.
didn't envision or anticipate becoming a crystal
Mm.
resource or a design company for that. That just unfolded. And I think that there is a very strong power to crystals because they are objects from the earth. They have a pulse, they have a vibration, they have a frequency. But like anything else, is what I'm realizing, it's your relationship with them, it's your connection to them. It's not the object in and of itself. And I think that
Hmm.
when you're a little younger, like you would be like, oh my God, a rose quartz can find you love. Let me go on a date and get a rose quartz and it'll all be perfect and work out. But it's your intention with the rose quartz. Like if you get a rose quartz and say, I feel the energy and the power, but this is what I'm looking for and this is how I want to relate to it. It can be a visual reminder of what you want or what intentions you want to set and how you can benefit from that. But I don't believe, in sort of that voodoo aspect of like, oh, this is going to just suddenly do all of that for you. So in our
Hmm.
descriptions, like we discuss the properties and the spiritual meanings of the crystals, but we don't make claims of, okay, this is going to do that. But you do start to realize, you know, the power and the vibration and the color and how it all connects and how influenced we are by visuals, energetics, textures, light, shining. And
Yeah.
um, I don't know, the crystals have just become such a fun way to design, but I don't like to limit myself and say, okay, this is what we're going to do indefinitely, because
Yeah.
as healing journeys go on, you learn about something else or you incorporate another material. But a lot of our pieces are also
Mm.
just metal. Like we work a lot with, brass and design and pieces like that, so it's not solely stones.
Hmm. Hmm. But I liked how your explanation there threads back to what you said very early on about your interest with history and lifestyle and how societies live. Because when you look at the the world, all continents have sort of their own history with natural materials, right? And in their decorations and in healing and how they use it. So it all kind of has come together very nicely for
Yeah,
you.
no, I love that, and I didn't even think of that in that way, but it's true. If you look at different,
Mm.
like now we're in a global society, so you can order any stone that's, found anywhere in the world, and you can sort
Right.
of create this visual. But if you do look back to, different times in biblical times and historic times, like stones were always prevalent, and I was
Hmm.
always fascinated by like the ancient Egyptian exhibits and, all the stones that they have and how they use stones for color, for art,
Hmm.
for makeup, for,
Yeah.
for everything. And it was a design resource even thousands of years ago in these ancient civilizations.
Yeah.
And people would adorn themselves in jewelry from the beginning of time, and
Hmm.
that's what's around you, so that's what you want to use and cultivate. And I think that they were just honoring nature and beauty in nature. It's the way people intuitively display
Yeah.
flowers, or touch
Hmm.
sand or collect shells. Like we're just so it's a magnet to us. Like I think we're like programmed to be attracted to the stuff that our earth provides for us.
Hmm. Yeah. You're just doing a modern twist to
Right,
it.
right.
Okay, well, we're kind of running short on time. So, of course, I want to thank you for sharing so much with us today. I feel like I've learned even more from our last meeting last year. So, I usually end my conversation with our guests with three questions. Do you want me to ask all three at once, or you want me to do one by one?
I think one at a time.
Okay,
I want to
so
focus.
the first question is, what keeps you grounded?
What keeps me grounded, I would say, are my rituals. Like I have, I get on kicks and I have different rituals that I go to, but like my day-to-day ritual is like a super hot bath. Like every day I need to like soak myself in water and immerse myself, and it washes away the day, which is amazing. Sometimes in the morning I do cold plunges. Even in New York City in the winter, your pipes can be really cold. I'll fill up a tub with freezing water and I'll just go in, and it wakes me up for the day. Stretching, meditating, moving. Yoga has been my go-to practice, and I think that what I realize is no matter what throughout the day, I'm always somehow stretching or moving or inverting or doing something yoga related, even if it's not a structured yoga practice.
Mm,
Yeah,
okay.
I think. Mhm.
Those are your
Yeah,
rituals,
yeah. No,
your
I'm just
rituals.
thinking rituals, like even a cup of tea in the morning, like everything's a ceremony. Because I loved
Mm,
history and fashion history, I was always so enchanted by ceremony. And I think even like the objects we create for tabletop, like were to honor those ceremonies and rituals, and
mm,
creating objects for all of the things and the ceremonies that keep me grounded. So even for example, for the bath, like we added bath crystals. For drinking a cup of tea, which is my favorite, we added a coaster. Like there's always something to honor, these rituals that I enjoy.
mm. That's so beautiful. Because it's actually very intentional, because everything
Yes,
you said, it's like we're so busy that you don't sit down to be like, oh, I'm honoring that I'm sitting here with this cup of tea. It's just kind of like, I'm really
right,
thirsty. I'm going to drink this cup of tea now. Right. Or,
right,
or like, I'm really sweaty. I need to take a shower. So I'm going to go take a shower versus like, oh, this actually feels very nice. And you're letting it, like you said, let things wash away while you're in the
right. And
shower or in the,
that's
yeah.
sort of like what you're discussing is like an active meditation. And I think that I try to tune into a lot of these active meditations. And, sometimes I get challenged by different things, but I've always been so aware of details and appreciation. And like if I drink a cup of tea, I'm like obsessed with my cup of tea. I'm passionate about my cup of tea. It's the how long did I brew it? What honey did I put in? Where did I get it from? Or it's a story. I got it in France. I got it in England. I did, everything I try to like, make special.
How do you make, this might be, I don't know if you'll have an answer for me on this one, but how do you make living in New York City those moments special? Like when you're commuting and it's like, traffic or taking the subway and it's crowded. How do you bring that mindset to those moments? Because New York is a
Yeah,
really fast paced city, right? So it's like everyone's like, go, 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 go. But if you are intentional about those things, how do you remind yourself living in the city?
I think that also you have to love whatever you're doing, because if you resent it, it's going to show up in other ways. And I love New York. Um, there are frustrating things about New York, very frustrating things, but there's a lot of beauty within it. And I try to remember and remind myself that everything that I'm doing is a privilege and a gift. And, just if I'm on a walk, you notice something, a beautiful building, architecture, you notice it's spring, the cherry blossoms are in bloom, this, like, there's always something changing. There's always something to observe. If you notice the leaves falling off, the leaves coming back, the buds starting, the grass, someone renovated a building, a new cafe opened. Like, if you keep your eyes open, you're always contained. And the subway has always been a bit of a challenge for me, but now I try to say, oh my God, I get to just like listen to a podcast or listen to my favorite song. Like, this is cool. Like, let me sit, and I sort of get with the motion of the swaying car. And sometimes there's a lot of people, and sometimes there's very weird or scary people too. And you have to hold your breath of like, okay, I'm going to get through this. What is this here to show me? What is this here to teach me? Um, you know, and just, I
Mm.
guess, enjoy wherever you are, because not everything is comfortable.
Hmm. That's a good reminder. Okay, so
Yeah.
my second question. What recommendation would you give to the audience um, in terms of like books or podcasts that or movies or mentors or whatever it is that has helped you over the years with your healing journey, that when you meet customers or you meet new friends, and maybe they're sharing some struggle they're going through, or some problem they're in experiencing at the time, and not necessarily seeking your like suggestion or help, but you'd offer, be like, oh, you can listen to this podcast, or I've read this book like many many times, it's always given me a new light towards the situation, I recommend it to you. What would those resources be that you found helpful for yourself that you would offer to other people?
I mean, I'm like so excited to always share things with people. And I have this like enthusiasm and zest. Like, when I found something, like, oh my God, it's life changing. It's the most amazing thing. You have to listen to this. It's going to inspire you. And I'm that person that's always sending people episodes, podcasts, books. Oh my God, this book changed my life, And I mean, I have a lot of those. I think my big aha moment, which I always talk about, is like Joe Dispenza's content really, really
Mm-hmm.
inspired me and really moved me. I think the ability to manifest and, meditate on certain things, and quantum physics is an incredible reminder that we have a certain power through our thoughts and through our beliefs, and rewiring that is really a great awareness. Um, Also, I loved Edith Eger's book, The Choice. I think it was so, so inspiring to hear a Holocaust survivor and, her perspectives, and writing this book at such a late stage in her life, that it's never too late. Sometimes we think it's too late to do something. And she wrote this book in her 90s and found success, um, which is very
Wow.
inspiring. Um, but I'm always just listening to little nuggets or stories or things. And I think that I always try to find it outside, but what I'm trying to do more is find all of that within myself and the answers within myself. And I hope to create more content and share more of that insight and wisdom as I evolve and grow and have been through different journeys. I would like to be, fill a void in things that I'm missing. I find that it's hard, which I want to, create somehow, like pep talks, because my mom used to be such a cheerleader for me and give me the most amazing pep talks all the time. And now I have to do it for myself. But I'm like, what about the people who never had pep talks or never had anything? Just like a little short burst of inspiration. So the way we talk to our kids, the way we talk to our friends.
Mm. Hmm. That's very helpful. Find answers within yourself. Okay, so the last one is a little bit similar, but it's more like, what 2 cent would you tell the audience who are listening to this episode who resonate with your storyline or feel inspired by the story we're listening to? Yeah, what 2 cent would you give them if they resonate with you? Or sometimes, if that's like, if you want to reverse the question, it'd be kind of like saying, what would you tell your younger self what you know now? Which is kind of what you were referring to earlier about like pep talks, but
Yeah.
just yeah. So so that was the last question.
I mean, I guess, my younger self, I would sort of say, stay the course, see your light, be the light, keep shining, keep shining. Don't let this dim you. Don't let this dim you. And like, I guess my 2 cents for people is, which I said on another podcast, is I feel like a lot of people are sleeping behind the wheel, behind their lives and letting it waste. And because I've had different challenges that have awakened me in so many ways to find gratitude and meaning in these micro moments versus like macro moments. A lot of people wait for a big occasion, like a huge event or a huge celebration or a huge loss. But sometimes it's, the things leading up to that, or, the exciting moments or a connection. And I think it's just staying in the present moment, because so many people go too much to the past, go too much to the future, but the only thing you can control is right now and where you are right now. And,
Mm.
a lot of these things sound cliche, and I'd like to find a way to make them not seem cliche, but you are in the driver's seat of your life. So don't be asleep behind the wheel. Like, wake up, look around, take charge, and just feel
Mm.
where you are.
Mm. That's really helpful, I think. I think that's a great way to end our conversation with this note for people to take away. Take the wheel and drive.
Yes.
Don't fall asleep behind the wheel.
Yes.
I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add to our conversation, but before we finish off, I will include like your website and your social media on the episode resources link below, including the resources you just mentioned earlier, like the book and Joe Dispenza's content. And I think, oh, you will offer Curito audience a little discount. I'll include that in the information
Yeah.
as well, so people can purchase your products and you ship around the world.
We ship worldwide, and I think that, I would love for people to just feel free to always, reach out or open a dialogue, because, I always learn from all of our customers and clients and different cultures and different locations. Like, it's so cool to be speaking with you around the world, you know, on a podcast, and we did meet in person. So I think I'm always keeping my eyes open for growth and opportunity and creativity. So as far as like what our brand offers, we're a design service, and we also have, a branded collection that lives on our
Mhm.
website, arianaost.com. We have social media, also trying to, create more content and bring the brand to life with products. So just always being open to figure out how that journey unfolds and what's next. But I really
Yeah.
appreciate you, featuring me and giving the exposure to what we've worked and created. And I'm so glad to have met you in person and have you, come in and see, the studio and the energy and the materials. And I know you kept just like adding stuff and adding stuff. Like, every time we described the product or spoke about a story or what this can do for you, you were just so enthusiastic, and it was so refreshing.
Well, thank you for creating such beautiful products to heal us. It's very important. The world needs more of it right now. So,
Oh,
thank you
thank you.
so much.
Wonderful.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to Curito Connects. For more Connects content, collaborations, and discoveries set to inspire you on your own individual journey, please head to our website at www.curito.co. Until next time, stay inspired, and thank you for joining us at Curito Connects.